You're listening to Cash and Sass. I'm Lisa Marie, your go-to gal for all things money. As the Sassy Wealth Queen and the brains behind the Sassy Wealth Coach, I'm here to take you on a thrilling ride from the financial chaos to sassy and sexy money.
Welcome back, my sassy friend, to another episode of Cash and Sass. My name is Lisa Marie. I am the Sassy Wealth Queen, the brains and the powerhouse behind Transcendent Wealth Company, and of course, this podcast, Cash and Sass. With me today, I have my guest, Morgan Anderson, and I have been waiting to do this episode, so I'm so excited. She is the founder of Golden Lion Tax Solutions and the author of Tax Debt Rule Number 1, There's Always a Solution. Over the last 25 years, plus 25 years, Morgan has successfully resolved thousands of clients' cases before the IRS and state tax agencies by identifying the best solution option given each client's unique financial condition and relentlessly pursuing its acceptance. During her career, she has mastered the complex labyrinth of the IRS and state tax systems, even successfully negotiating solutions for her clients with the National Taxpayer Advocate and the Director of Collection Appeals. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so excited to have you here. And we were talking before we hit record button, and I'm going to tell y'all, you know what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about anything and everything to do with money. However, we're going to talk about how it has to do with you on the tax implication side of, one, setting up best practices for a solid business plan and financial strategies. Because so often we go and create the business, we go and start the business, and if we don't have really an accounting background, meaning you went to education like I did and did accounting, but chose not to go to CPA, I did this fractional CFO, or you go and do a CPA. If you don't do those things, majority of the time you forget about the financial strategy and setting up that part of the business, and it comes back and bites you. So today we're going to talk about the things that you should do. Even if you're in business now, you may have a few that you haven't done yet. So still listen. I am sure that you're going to get a lot of information from it. And one of the things I also want to do is talk about leveraging credit, when to leverage credit, when not to, those kind of things, because it's important. In today's society, it's important. And sometimes we have to do those things. And I want it to be told that it's not a bad thing to do it. You just need to know when, and you need to be smart and manage it correctly when we do that. But let's dive into first. Give us a little bit of snippet of you starting your business and where you as far as your relationship with money is. And then let's dive into what those best practices can be for having good financial strategies or pulling ourselves out of not so good financial strategies into better ones.
Yeah. I think as any business owner out there will say, when I started my business, I got hoodwinked by some people with some shiny things, selling me the sun, the moon, and the stars. If you just hire us and you pay us this much money, we can get you better SEO. We can create this amazing website. And I'd been in my industry for 22 years at the time that I decided to leave and create my company, Golden Lion. And I did it because the company I'd been with changed ownership. They changed their philosophies with how to best service clients, and it didn't align with what I knew to be best, right? So I told my husband, I've got to start this. Like, I'm waking up in the middle of the night with this idea, this passion burning in me to create this company. And he said, as long as you don't tank our household financial condition, do what you will. Like, I'm out of it. Keep me out of it. And that was fine. And I knew it was going to be an investment, right? And I probably, for wanting to move as quickly as I could, I probably didn't make the best decisions with like liquidating 401k and, dumping a bunch of money into the front end of the company without having a balance of income coming in. So I was kind of throwing money down a deep hole. And looking back on it, I probably wasted a good $100,000 doing that. And as the years have gone on that the company's been here and we've grown and, the financials are in the black, not the red, and I'm not throwing money away. I kind of kick myself, but at the end, as long as you can make a decision on the short term that is going to pay you back and then some in the long run,
Right.
sometimes you got to just bite the bullet and make that leap of faith. Do your homework beforehand, right? Like, I thought I did my homework. I probably did 50% of what I should have. I was very optimistic with my projections, and it turned out they were like a quarter of it for the first year. But, if anybody said, do you have any regrets with what you did? The only regret I would say I had is that I let people sell me something that I didn't need, and it cost me a lot of money. Um, as long as you take a very conservative position with the way you spend the money to get to the other side of, okay, I'm investing in something that I'm going to start, or I'm starting and I'm investing in it because I see the long run. Just try to keep the optimism in check.
Right. Especially when sometimes the end result can be a little bit longer than
Mm-hmm.
maybe than what you anticipated. And so you've put the investment out, right? So
Right.
you need to you got it. And here's my other thing. Don't beat yourself up when you make a bad investment.
Nope.
One, look and say, okay, did I do my homework? Did I make the decision based off of the information I had? And if the answer is excuse me, if the answer is yes, then don't beat yourself up.
Yeah.
Okay, what can I do going forward to ensure that I'm digging a little deeper before I make a decision on the investment? Those are the things, at least what I have learned over the years of having my business, because you're going to make mistakes. Excuse me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love your point of do not beat yourself up. We are so hard on ourselves. Any of us who have gone into business for ourselves, we're typically type A people, right? We're highly productive, we're highly driven, we're highly motivated, but we are also hypocritical about ourselves. Like, we just will tear ourselves down, lose sleep over stuff. You got to just say, forget it. I made the decision. I committed to it. Yeah. Could I have made a better decision, or could I have made a different one? Hindsight's 2020. Move on.
Yeah,
Move
as my
forward.
coach says,
Yeah.
the past is behind you. You need to be looking ahead. And you're right, because here's the thing is we lift each other up, but we'll beat ourselves down. So we need
Absolutely.
I know. I'm like, everybody will turn around and go, Lisa, if your client did this, what would you say? And I turn around and say exactly what I just said. And they go, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, shit.
Exactly.
It's like, so
Yeah.
my question is, what are some of the practical financial strategies that someone who's in business, or we'll first start like, we'll say if they're in business and maybe they haven't, or they don't know if they've done some of the things that they should have. What are some of the things that they can look at to say, okay, do I have the right strategy set up, or what should my strategies be to make sure, I'm just going to say it, I know what the hell's going on with my money?
Right. Right. Well, first and foremost, a lot of small business owners, people starting out or in the first few years of their business, are afraid to look at the numbers. They're afraid
You
to
would be you would be surprised how many people are 10 years into their business and afraid to look at their numbers. Just saying.
I know. But when you consider what your financial picture is, right? It tells a story. It tells a story of your business. That's what the annual tax returns do. That's what your P&L and your balance sheets do. So first and foremost, understand what those documents are telling you. You can read them like a book, and it's reflective of what you're doing with your business. So let's take, for example, a manufacturer, right? They need to be able to see, okay, how many employees do I have on the floor producing the widgets? How much money are we making per widget? Are we making enough money per widget to cover the cost per minute or per hour on the floor? You can really geek out and look at this stuff from a very different standpoint than just numbers that are reflected on the piece of paper. And the more you can apply the way you look at the numbers and the way you interpret them directly to what your passion is that caused you to start that business, the more fun you're going to have playing with it. I love working with clients who are contractors, and I'll say, okay, so how did that job go? What was your profit percentage from that job? What do you mean? Well, you put a roof on a condo, a group of condos, right? So what were the costs of the materials? What were the costs of the labor? What was that job's proportion of your insurance, your dumpster costs, everything else? Like, how do you look at that job and say, we cleared 30% profit on it? And a lot of small business owners don't think about investing in that type of financial understanding. And that's where they oftentimes underbid jobs or will underbid jobs to compete with the next group down the road, but they're not profitable enough to cover the expenses. You need to learn what your profitability margins are to make educated decisions to pass on a job if somebody's beating you up on it, right? So learn how to read your financial sheets and understand what they are and how they directly relate to what you do for a business. And the other thing I would say too is make your bookkeeper and your CPA or your accountant, your enrolled agent, your CFO, think of them as your board, right? This is a huge talking point that I always hone in on. These people are well studied in the numbers, well studied in all types of different businesses, and they're going to apply all of the knowledge that they have amassed throughout their whole career to benefit you. They are your biggest allies when you have a business.
Please preach that again. Like, really? Can you wait a minute? Can you say that? Can you say that even louder? Because I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs, won't see the benefit of having a fractional CFO or a CPA or any of those things until things have exploded.
Yeah.
Or have come close to exploding. And I understand. I do. And I get it. Because they're like, well, do we really? And here's the thing. When I come in as a fractional CFO, I'm your partner. You literally have me in your back pocket. I am your partner. None of my clients have to make a choice about money as far as looking at their money management without speaking to me first. They can come to me. They have that choice. And majority of them will come and ask me, okay, like, what do you think? Show me, the figures, and we'll talk about it. Or they'll have the figures and they'll go, okay, did I look at this correctly? Right? Because I tell them your P&L and your balance sheet's talking to you. However, your P&L talks to you after the fact.
Right.
Your cash flow and opening up your bank account and looking at it as you go through the month is talking to you here and now. And it wants to have a relationship with you, but you avoiding it is not helping. And I agree, P&L has to be looked at. However, your P&L is after the fact.
Right.
So if you're going to keep looking at the P&L, but you're not going to look at anything throughout the month, then you're not going to really know, okay, am I fixing things, right? You'll know by the end of the month. And that aggravates everybody because they're like, I want to know before the month. Well, then you need to open your bank account.
Your accounts receivable, your accounts payable, see what you've got coming in, what you need to still pay throughout the rest of the month.
Cash flow.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's very important. And it's okay that if you don't know how to run these figures or look at them, again, that's where your CPA, your fractional CFO, your enrolled agent, as far as tax advising and all that, that's where we come in. I don't do taxes. Okay. I have an enrolled agent.
Yeah.
I did it the first year and I decided it was not what I wanted to do. I was going to leave it to the people who loved doing it. I was not I have accounting background, I have a degree, and I made a decision of not doing the CPA testing. And apparently I made a decision for a really, really good reason other than I don't like taking tests. And it was because I knew I was not going to like all those taxes. They
Right.
change too many of the rules too often. And I don't
Constantly.
and that is why, because they change all the rules constantly. It's like as
Right.
soon as you learn it, there's something new. And I'm like, okay, I'm out. I have an enrolled agent. I have an enrolled agent who is my tax advisor who, y'all, I pay her to help me with the things that are going to affect my taxes because that's not my expert field. I don't want to
Right.
deal with it.
Right.
You not knowing your numbers or not knowing your numbers is not an excuse as far as, okay, why would I hire a CPA, an enrolled agent, or a bookkeeper or a fractional CFO? Or not understanding the P&L is not a good reason because they can help you understand those information. That is what they went to school for. That is what they're good at. That's where all our knowledge where all of our knowledge is. And you having someone like that is going to actually help you get further because, again, like she said, we're your ally.
Yeah.
We will be your biggest ally, especially if it's someone who cares. Not someone who just runs the numbers at the end of the year and just says, okay, here's your P&L or here's your balance sheet and here's your taxes.
We're
When
not
you have
talking
someone-
about H&R Block level or Jackson Hewitt. And I'm sorry, those services provide a service for a type of client. If you are a business owner, that's not where you should be going.
Right.
Sorry, not trying to throw anybody under the bus,
No.
but
Well, I mean, but there's also some tax professionals who own their own business who also don't go deep enough to help the entrepreneurs like they should.
correct.
However, that's why I say make sure you do your homework, make sure that you're getting with someone that's aligned. However, all of us are going to be able to help you be able to do those numbers and look at them and say, okay, what it is. Now, when it's a service provider and we don't actually produce a product, what are some practical financial strategies they can do? Because some of my listeners are going to be, okay, that's fine and great, dandy, but I don't manufacture. I'm not a contractor. I don't do roofs. I'm a service provider.
Right.
So how does this affect me? I can hear them now. I can hear it clear as day.
Well, and for a lot of service providers, I've found that if they don't have employees, it's just them, you can keep your books on an Excel spreadsheet. I know some bookkeepers and accountants are rolling their eyes at hearing this, but
Only reason I do is because they commingle funds, and if they
and that's what I was going to say. So first things first, you should
do you see my face? Do you hear? Can you hear it? Don't.
You should always, for your business, even if you're just a sole proprietor, a therapist, you seek patients in your home, keep a separate bank account and do not use your business bank account for personal expenses and don't use your personal accounts for business expenses. Have one credit card that you keep solely for the business and then everything else on your personal, that's fine. But you have to create a very thick line between what your business is doing financially.
She said thick line, not a thin, a thick line.
I'm talking one of those earth-shattering craters, okay?
Thank you.
Commingling is like one of the nasty curse words in the finance world, just so you all know.
You just know that like the facial expression. So if you're watching the video, you saw it. If you're listening, just imagine my face all crinkling up because I did.
But it's true. I mean, commingling. So think about this. When you have a business, everything financially, you bear the burden of proof for. So if you can't prove without a shadow of a doubt that an expense is truly a business expense, it's always going to default to you personally. And people get very lazy about keeping track of their money. right? Well, it's not that big of a deal. I ran to USPS and I'll just put it on my personal card and, no big deal.
Or I had to go to Walmart and I had to get business stuff and personal, but I'll just charge it all together.
Yes. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Do
And
not do
here's
that.
why. Keep in mind, every single dollar that you can claim as a legitimate business expense reduces the number that you get charged income tax on. You got to remember that. I've had a lot of clients, so I specialize only in tax debt. So I'm on the very back end of the tax world. I don't do tax returns. I don't do advising. I deal with debt. So once somebody has had a problem,
you deal with the one who hasn't been paying, who hasn't filed it correctly, and all of a sudden
There
they
you
owe
go.
thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
the largest case I've had was a conglomerate of LLCs commingling between the LLCs and employee sharing and all this stuff. Over $30 million
Oh
owed
my gosh.
to the IRS for unpaid payroll taxes, and then millions of dollars owed in income tax. And we ended up protecting them, no Department of Justice referrals. We got to solutions. It was amazing. It was like 5 years of work, though. But I also help people who owe $35,000 in income tax and they don't know how to solve it. That's what I do. But a lot of times people have come to me and they say, okay, well, the IRS, I claimed all these people as contractors and I was paying them cash under the table, but boy, I have an income tax bill of $35,000 or $50,000. And my accountant said I couldn't write off what I was paying these contractors because I don't have a W-9 from them. I don't have any paperwork, and it was somebody that I can't even locate anymore. Remember, if you have a business and you're operating as an entrepreneur, an LLC member, a shareholder for an S Corp or a C Corp or a partnership, you have got to remember that you have an obligation to keep your financial records and your employer records tight. Every I dotted, every T crossed. You never want to pay people cash because it's not a legitimate business expense at that point, and it comes over as direct income, taxable income to you. So just remember it. Yeah. I can't preach it enough that you have to keep your records clean and tight.
Yeah, and it's really important because I'll have people who've come to me, and they'll be small businesses and they'll be LLCs or S corps, and they may have an employee or they may not have any. If they're an S corp, it could be just them, their employees, or they have contractors, and they won't have W-9s. And the first thing we do is we make sure they get their W-9s, even if they have a bookkeeper. First thing I'm doing is making sure they get their W-9s. As a fractional CFO, I'm not going to not make sure my clients get their because I don't want them to get penalized later.
Right.
Likelihood of it happening within the time they're working with me may be slim, and we're not going to take the chance. It's also knowing, like when I ask someone, well, how much do you spend in software? How much do you do in this each month? I don't know. Okay.
You should know.
No, you should know. Okay. Even if you have a bookkeeper, even if you have a fractional CFO, I may not personally be able to tell you right off the top of my head. However, I have a spreadsheet that I can go to and immediately tell you how much. I can immediately tell my person how much I spend each month in expenses, what my recurring is, how much is software. I can tell them how much projected income I'm going to be expecting this next month. Projected. It's not cash received yet. It's projected. Okay. So those things are important to know. Now, I'm also going to say it does not do any good to have 50,000 spreadsheets.
Nope.
I love spreadsheets. Most of us financial gurus love spreadsheets. And please back me up on this, Morgan. 50,000 spreadsheets is not what you need because all it does is cause chaos.
Well, and have you worked with clients before who are so busy doing things like playing with spreadsheets that they're not actually working the amount of time that they could be? There's a lot.
Or they have 50,000 spreadsheets and say, oh, all the information's here, but now they want you to go through those 50,000 spreadsheets to pull out the information. And I'm like, you're making my brain hurt. I love this stuff and you're making my brain hurt.
More convoluted does not necessarily mean better. You just want it to be
Right.
thorough and easy to work with and easy to read.
Yep.
You
Simple.
can. So here's another, you asked me earlier, what should people know, as they're building their businesses
Mhm.
and everything? Do you know, if you've got employees, how much does each employee cost you per month? That is such a basic number that a lot of business owners can't tell you. And granted, there are employees at different levels. Like let's say you have an office, you have assistants, you have the receptionist, you have the people, maybe associates or client service representatives. You should know how much does it cost for them to have a computer and the technology they depend on every month, and their healthcare expense and the workers' comp insurance expense attributed to them. Because as you're looking at growing, you ought to say, okay, how many hours a week can I keep that person busy? What does that equate to in income being received? How much does that position cost me per month? And if you have the ability to grow, that's where you start evaluating, can I bring more people on? If I have somebody who costs me, let's say $8,000 or not, let's say $8,000, just to use a rough number. And like in my work, we have a billable hour system. And let's say they can earn our firm $12,000 a month in billable time, right? And it cost me $8,000, that's $4,000 profit. Done. That's like a simple decision to make. But if you're winging it and you're not looking at something in that type of analysis, you could be setting yourself up for making some bad knee-jerk decisions. So again, getting with your EA, CPA, your CFO, and sitting down and saying, okay, I'm looking at wanting to grow. We've got these contracts coming in. Here's how much the income will be off of them. Can we fund this many more employees? Right? Having that type of, it sounds funny. I feel like a principal scolding people, but if we have these type of open conversations, right? You can have people who not only work with you and not only have the experience of working with you, but who have the schooling behind it and who have helped hundreds to thousands of other people asking the same question and giving them guidance. Or they've helped hundreds of people where they've seen where they made some bad decisions and they witnessed it because they weren't involved. The client didn't come to them and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think? They just did it on their own. And by the time the CPA or EA sees the financial records to pull the annual return together, they're like, what did you do? What did you base this decision on to bring 10 more employees on? You don't have the income to cover it. So definitely think of everybody that you're working with, your professionals. Think of them as members of your board. And you want to just basically leverage the crap out of that relationship to benefit you and your business.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I mean, that's what they're there for, right? That's what they're there for. And I think it's just really important. I don't think we can actually hone in and talk about just how important it is. I'm going to ask one question because I know some people may be thinking it, but they're afraid to ask. What do they do if they do get an audit notification or a tax bill from the IRS? Now, I don't know anyone personally that's gotten years ago I do, but I don't know anyone that I've worked with who's gotten an audit notification. I've never personally got one. Knocking on wood, don't want one. And I think it's important for people to know what to do. One, I know what not to do. Do not ignore it.
Oh, no. And
I
Do
know
you know,
that.
I've helped so many clients who went through an audit and they didn't reply because they were afraid of it. And it ends up the IRS says, "Oh, okay. Well, we had a simple question for you. We asked for verification of these items on your tax return. You didn't reply, so we're going to assume the worst. And we're going to penalize you for it, and then we're going to start adding interest on it." Right now the interest rate the IRS is charging is 7%. And then they share the information with your state, and if your state has income taxes, you're going to also get additional assessments there. Um, so first things first, don't give it more power than it deserves, right? If you get a letter from the state or from the IRS, don't start quaking in your boots. Don't let it take your breath away. Open it up and read it. Because a lot of times these are correspondence audits. They're saying, "Hey, we looked at your tax return. We have a question on this. Can you submit additional information?" That's all they're doing. And if you submit it and they say, "No, we don't allow it," then you're going to end up with a balance, and you can address the balance. It's just a hiccup. It's just a bill that you have to deal with. If you work with a CPA or an EA, definitely sit down and talk to them about what you got. Show the letter to them and say, "Okay, what do we need to do?" And I would let them handle it. If you did the tax return yourself, you're the one who has to reply. And, there's no other option there. But don't ignore it. Please don't ignore it, because that's when bad things happen.
That's when penalty gets added, interest gets added, and it goes from a molehill to a mountain.
Absolutely.
And we ignore it because we're like, "Oh my God, it's like," and again, don't let it have more power than it really has. Don't
Yeah.
give it more power. If
Nope.
you're going to ignore it, you're going to give it more power. You're going to give them more power. And I think I asked that question because I just think it's really, really important that people understand that your CPA and your enrolled agent, even if you filed your taxes yourself, you can still go to them for advice. They're going to tell you what you need to send. Okay. You'll still have to respond, but make sure you respond. And if you're not sure, talk to someone who can tell you, "Hey, look, this is what they're talking about. This was it. We didn't do your tax return, but you did. You're going to have to send this."
Right.
I don't advise you to do your own tax return, especially once you get to a certain point in your business.
No.
I do not advise it. Even though I know how, I don't even do mine. Okay?
I don't do mine either. I'm an enrolled agent. I'm licensed to do tax returns. That's just not my specialty. It's
like,
just,
I'm not going to do it. I have someone to do mine. And I love her, and she does mine. And I meet with her a couple of times a year because she's my tax advisor, and I let her know what's going on personally and professionally and how things may be changing. And she makes notes. We talk, and then if something changes between the next time I talk to her, I'll let her know in the portal. And if not, then we talk later. It's just vital that we have these conversations. And I know that this type of conversation when dealing with money is probably not a conversation most people want to have.
right.
And it is a conversation that's really important. Having open conversations about what's going on with your money with people who can actually help you and support you so that you can take your business further and it doesn't come back and bite you in the ass later is really, really important. And that's the reason why I wanted Morgan on my show and why I was so excited to finally for us to have it. We've had to reschedule a couple of times. I'm so excited that we were able to do it.
If I can share something else.
Yes.
So we were talking about kind of the feeling of dealing with the IRS. We touched on it briefly. So here's something that I want everybody to know. The IRS, and this is specifically at the IRS level, they created this mental image we all have of them. They created that image of something you should fear on purpose. And the reason is because if you fear them, you're going to voluntarily comply with the tax obligations you are supposed to tend to as a citizen and an earner in the United States. So know this, like we were talking about, don't give it more power. I want you to know that. They created that image in all of our heads. You know, the guy showing up at your front door with a fedora and an overcoat and a gun and a badge saying, I'm going to take your firstborn. They made that on purpose. So know that it doesn't happen that way. It does not happen that way. Every client that comes to me, one of the first questions out of their mouth is, am I going to go to jail? It doesn't happen. Unless you are a true tax protester or evader. I'm talking about the people that claim, 20 dependents, and they think of all these tax schemes, the 16th Amendment wasn't ratified and all of this stuff. And, they buy into these tax schemes. Those are the people that get in trouble. But if you have a tax bill from an audit or you filed a return and you just couldn't pay the balance, they will work with you. They're not this big, hairy, one-eyed monster. They may feel that way, but you can always find a solution to a balance owed. So
yes, and I also think it's really important to know that just because you get aggravated because you can't get through to them is not another reason to ignore it. I think they do that
because it happens.
Also, and they think that, like when I prepare taxes, they think we can get through faster. For the record, no, we can't. Okay. For one client, when I first started my business 8 years ago, and again, I did it for the first 6 months, 7 months of the business, and then I was out. I was on hold for over 4.5 hours to get through to the IRS. So I'm telling you, it is not just y'all. And I got aggravated. Oh my gosh, I got so aggravated because if you get disconnected, you have to try again. The point is have a professional who loves doing this, who will have ways to get answers so that you don't ignore it because you're like, I am not going to be on hold for 4.5 hours to ask a question because I don't understand something. Because I'm guaranteeing you will be on hold that long, if not longer. Or you may not even get through. Again, I believe they do that on purpose.
So they have recently
they make it complicated.
It is difficult, and think about all of us. How hard as a business owner is it to count on somebody showing up to work every day, first and foremost, right? There's a lot of employee protection out there. If somebody's sick, they're sick. They're not going to come in, which is fine. But think about that at the national level. They have tens of thousands of people on the phones every day. How many of them just don't show up for work one day? And second of all, prior to DOJ going in and saying, IRS, we're getting rid of a bunch of dead weight in the employee pool at the IRS, I would get on the phone. I'd sit on hold for an hour, hour and a half, get on the phone with somebody. I'd say, hey, I've got a client that owes $60,000. I need to go through a financial form with you to set up monthly payments. Oh, okay, hold on. Click. And it was because there were a bunch of people who just didn't want to do their job. It was so frustrating. Since DOJ came in and, like them or not, they've cut a lot of waste out. A lot of people now, when you call in, they say, oh, hey, thank you so much for calling the IRS. My name is Agent blah, blah, blah. My ID number is blah, blah, blah. How can I help you? There is this whole different feel to them since this has happened. And it's a blessing because all of us who call the IRS 10, 20, 30 times a month, we're like, oh my gosh, we can finally get through to somebody. We can get through to somebody who wants to do their job. They know how to do their job, and it makes everything so much more efficient. So yeah, just love or hate DOJ, they've had a positive impact on the call center.
It doesn't matter if you love or hate them. The key is not to avoid the taxes. And if you don't want to go through the call, have someone else do it for you.
Yes.
That is the biggest thing. Because again, the only thing that's going to come from you ignoring it
penalties
is more
and
trouble.
Interest. Yep.
Yeah. You're going to owe more money.
Interest.
And if you truly don't owe it, then you want to make sure it's responded so that penalty and interest isn't added onto it because they're going to say, well, you never responded. So I just
Can I tell you the best time to call?
Sure. Tell my listeners the
Everybody's
best
going to
time to
love
call.
this. You may not like that I say this, but you can start calling at 7 a.m. your time zone. Don't call on a Monday or Tuesday. Don't call on a Thursday. Call on maybe a Wednesday or Friday. Those are kind of the slower mornings. If you can't call at 7 a.m. your time zone, call at 6 o'clock at night on a Thursday or Friday night. I'm telling you, those are the easiest times to get through.
And see, most people think it's like first, like 10 o'clock in the morning, and
No,
it's like,
gosh,
no, that's wrong. That's wrong.
no.
You have a special offer for my listeners.
I
Would you
do.
please tell them about the summit that you and I were talking about before we went live? And y'all, normally I don't do this, but I think this is really important, and so I am putting this as the offer that she's offering. It'll go along with the free offer that will be in the show notes, but I think this is really important. So I am wanting to put this in there for y'all.
Thank you.
Will you please let them know about this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's called the Essential Business Insights Seminar. And it is June 11th. It starts at 11 a.m. Mountain, and it's 2 hours. And we have 8 presenters locked in so far from different industries. Somebody who's going to talk about expenses, somebody who's going to talk about bookkeeping. We have somebody who's talking about investments for small business owners, what to do with your money as you're making it. We have somebody who's talking about me. I'm talking about taxes. We have a social media strategist. All of us are each going to present for only 10 minutes. And in those 10 minutes, you're going to learn 5 tips and tricks for you to immediately employ in your business to cut expenses, increase your profitability, increase your attraction to new clients and potentially clients that you're not thinking of right now. I mean, this is going to be 2 hours of investment from you, and you're going to learn at least 40 tips and tricks from all of us that you can implement immediately to improve everything. So it's typically $59. And we're going to give Lisa a $10 off coupon for all of you listeners that want to sign on and purchase an attendance for it. I'm so excited about it because I don't know how many summits and conferences you've been to, but I've been to them where I'm there all day. And I walk out after listening to 5, 6, 8 different people talk, and I'm like, I picked up 1 or 2 things that I'm going to implement. This is going to be rapid fire. Let me give you some insight from social media of 5 things you can do right now to get more of a spotlight on you and your business. And I'm so excited about it because everybody who I've spoken with about it is like, oh my gosh, yes, I just want to cut through the garbage that people try to float in these conventions and get to the point. So yeah, that's my gift to all of you.
And I'm really excited. The coupon code will be in the show notes, so make sure you use that. And again, it's going to give you $10 off. So for 2 hours with at least 40 actionable tips that you'll be able to walk away with, you will get it for $49. And I think that's a pretty good steal. If you don't take anything away from this, just remember ignoring your numbers is not the thing to do. Okay. You may not be in a position to have a bookkeeper, a fractional CFO, and a CPA. You may only be in a position to have one. Your CPA, 9 out of 10 times, they may have someone there who can also help with the books. I have somebody on my team who also helps with the books if you don't have a bookkeeper. Majority of us are going to be able to either refer you to someone or we'll have someone on our team to be able to do it. The key is don't ignore it. If you know enough to do it yourself, great. And have someone still help you with your taxes because you want to make sure someone is at least looking to make sure and advising you. I call it like a check balance system.
And you don't know what you don't know.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And the key is to make sure you're looking at those numbers, right? All of your numbers. I mean, was looking at my numbers in bank account and on my P&L, but I wasn't looking at the numbers as far as what I was spending on my social media and stuff like that, as for say what it was helping me do. And when I started looking at that, that gave me information that helped me make changes to be better for the business. So it's just looking at those numbers are just really, really important. Thank you so much for being here and having this candid conversation with me that is so needed. I truly, truly appreciate it. And y'all, until next time, remember, money can be sassy and sexy. Bye.
Thank you so much. It was great being here.
Thanks for joining us this week on Cash and Sass. Check us out on social media and on our website at www.thesassywealthcoach.com, where you can download my free Money Story Start Guide. The website again is www.thesassywealthcoach.com. And as always, subscribe to the show to catch every new episode and leave us a review so we can continue to bring you fresh content. And remember, yes, it is possible to have sassy and sexy money. See you next week.